Well, kia ora, and welcome to a Mini-Hoon here on the Kaka. I'm Bernard Hickey, and I'm here with Ganesh Nana, who is one of a group of economists who've written to the Prime Minister in recent days to just remind the Prime Minister and the government that last year they provided some advice to the government on how the economy was going. Ganesh, can you put into context that letter from last year and what you've said over the weekend?
It was a group of economists that came together and middle of last year, realising that things were going a bit worse than we thought it should, and recognising that there was a downturn and what appeared to be an absence of any appropriate fiscal policy response. And standard economic textbook, if the economy looks to go into recession, fiscal policy provides a bit of a floor to demand, and we have those what we call automatic stabilisers to help put a floor to demand and make sure that we don't dive too deep. And we were seeing some really bad signals coming out about this time last year, and so we did write to the PM and to MOF about what was their perspective, what was their fiscal policy response, what was their rationale for focusing on cutting government debt, and how was that connected to the external debt that we all know is the important debt that we should be focusing on, and how, in a nutshell, how does their austerity program fit with their wanting to grow the economy, and their export target at the time was doubling exports over the next 10 years. How did that all fit together? Because we weren't seeing it. It wasn't clear in any economic rationale that they were putting out. And lo and behold, in 12 months' time, things have got actually turned out a lot worse than we thought, to be honest. Not just the austerity program, but what we're seeing is another second round. Is a signal of even further round of cuts to government spending, and obviously a lot worse in terms of business performance, in terms of unemployment numbers, in terms of migration numbers. You know the story there, and you've been part of that messaging. And so we did put pen to paper again and reinforce that data and that evidence, and actually return to that fundamental question that we still need answered from the government. What is their fiscal policy response? It's literally missing in action out there.
Yeah, we had again another series of exchanges in Parliament about this very issue. Essentially, the opposition saying to the government, "Your strategy is not working. What are you going to do about it?" And they've simply repeated again that we're not going to change the strategy, and the strategy is cut government spending to reduce mortgage rates, and just simply lower mortgage rates will be enough to get the economy going again. And the best thing we can do as a government is reduce spending. And that took the form last year of reducing spending on things like kāinga ora, hospital build planning, school buildings, and then, of course, various cuts to various departments' spending growth. The Prime Minister said at the time, and repeatedly through this year, he was just adhering to the immutable laws of economics, which he says you get your house in order, you tighten your belt just like a household, and then everything will work. Just like it worked in 1992-93 when the mother of all budgets reduced the government's share in the economy, and the private sector, households and businesses stepped forward with lower interest rates to ride to the rescue. Well, are these immutable laws of economics, and how come it's not working this time?
Well, I've never met any immutable laws in economics. I've studied it and practiced it for heading towards 45 years now. This idea that austerity, government spending, is somehow going to magically solve our problems is a curious rationale. It's a curious prescription because it's never worked in the past. My first question back is, what's the problem they're trying to solve? They haven't, as we pointed out in the last letter last year, government does not have a debt problem. There is no evidence to say that government debt or government spending has been off the charts in the last few years. And indeed, you measure by any measure you want to take, whether the new debt measure or the previous one, we we are okay compared to any other part of the world that you want to compare us with, and definitely okay with recent history or even long history for New Zealand. Government debt has not been the problem. Our external debt has been the problem, and we can go into the conversation about how the two are linked. And if you accept that understanding in any economic theory about how the two are linked, it's not actually economics, it's pure accounting, then they're going about it the wrong way because you're reducing government debt. It's doing the wrong thing to our external debt. The conversation about government being too big, private sector doesn't step in. We've had a long time to get them to step in, whether it be in terms of education or health, dare I say in manufacturing, or dare I say in primary sector exports. They haven't stepped in. They've kept on doing what they've always done, which is low cost, low wage labour, little productivity growth, producing commodities, not going up the value chain as Treasury had told them to do over the last 30 to 40 years. Get out of the commodity price trap and let's start developing those new exports, those innovative exports, those new stuff that is going to build us a strong economy for the 21st century. Haven't gone there. So what is the problem they're trying to solve? And then let's have that argument about, or that conversation and debate about whether the private sector is actually going to step in. Our concern in terms of the evidence is there's no evidence that the private sector is stepping in this time round.
Yeah, Ian Rennie, the Treasury Secretary, was reported last week, front page of the Post, saying, we need to hunker down for a decade. There's going to be tight spending for a long time. We just have to do this because we need to make sure we've got some money in the kitty if there's some sort of disaster like an earthquake or more Gabrielle storms or another global financial crisis. We've got no choice with this. We have to do it. And I know it's tough, but we've got to save for a rainy day. What's your view on that? And his definition of saving for a rainy day is to get what he sees as net debt down, back under that 30% of GDP mark.
Well, there's a whole lot of things in there to unpack, and I will just go to that saving for a rainy day in net debt. We've saved for a rainy day for a long, long time. The Public Finance Act set the debt target, set the principles of fiscal responsibility, paragraph A, reduce debt. And we've been doing it for the last 40 years ever since. Listen, don't you think it's about time we stop that target and think about it? Recognise that is only financial debt that they are reducing. In the process of reducing financial debt, we've also managed to increase our economic debt. Draw the difference between economic and financial. If you're saving for a rainy day or the earthquake, look at what's in your earthquake kit at home. It's not just a pile of cash. It's unlikely to be actually. It's actually going to be a small amount of cash. It's going to be food. There's going to be a blanket in there, a tent, a means of cooking, drinking water. Those are your economic savings for your rainy day. Where is our economic savings for a rainy day in terms of a nation? We arguably bring down government debt, but where is our resilience? Where is the infrastructure? Where are we building those emergency hospitals that we might need? Are we building sufficient drinking water supplies that we might need? Are we actually investing in doctors and nurses and medical professionals that we might need for that rainy day? Are we providing the public transport and those other lifelines? Where is that sort of economic resilience that we need to invest in? This idea that we have to save and we've got no choice is totally, it's fallacious thinking. It's purely financial, and it's really quite sad that it's coming from the Secretary of the Treasury that is supposed to be looking at it from an economic perspective, not from a financial perspective. And so I argue this Treasury may be giving the government advice about its financial books. Who or what public service agency is giving it advice about its economic policy? And that is a challenge out there. And we're really quite keen to engage with this government and with any official about the economics that's underpinning this so-called strategy, I wouldn't go so far as to call it a strategy, it's just a mind-numbing reincarnation of past events. Where is that argument, that debate, that understanding about the economics? Because it's missing in action. We spent the 40 years of trying to get our government's books into so-called good, and we've forgotten about the economics, let alone investing in our people in terms of workforce training.
Just while they're watching, Ganesh, what would you say? You know, if the Prime Minister's listening and going, okay, so what's your idea?
My idea is to let's start talking about the economics. And there is nothing inherently nothing wrong with government spending, and there's inherently nothing wrong with government debt. Arguably on the right stuff, and we can then start talking about that. And by the way, if we're going to do both of those, yes, we have to borrow, and yes, we have to tax. Let's start talking about those for the long term, and especially in this cycle where we actually want to put a floor under the downturn and start lifting New Zealanders out and giving them hope for the future rather than the only option is to get on a plane.
Ganesh Nana, an economist, along with 14 others who have signed a letter. 19, sorry, yes.
20.
All right, and 20 others written a letter to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, just reminding the government about their warning from last year that things weren't going well. As it turned out, it was worse than even they had expected. Ganesh, thank you very much for being in a Mini-Hoon on the Kaka.
Thank you.